is gold a good investment? And I would venture to say gold is not an investment, because it doesn't produce anything.
Welcome to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. I am your host, Chad Hufford, and this is the podcast where we celebrate the unsung heroes of the working world. Each week, we dive into the incredible stories of honest, hardworking folks who have found financial success through grit, determination, and good old-fashioned elbow grease. So if you're ready to be inspired and learn how to turn your hard work into your own success story, you're in the right place. This is the Blue Collar Millionaire Show.
We're going to talk a little bit today about gold, precious metals, but really I want to discuss a little bit, Logan, like kind of the fundamentals of what an investment should look like. Like, what are the characteristics? Because gold, just picking on that for a little bit, because it is an all-time high. I mean, a lot of our clients are, as we're recording this, aware of that. But I also wanted to make this a little bit more timeless too, and just talk about some general principles around that regardless of what the price of gold is at any given time, I think that there's some general principles that we should explain, but also answer some questions before people ask. You know, what is gold a good investment? And I would venture to say gold is not an investment, because it doesn't produce anything, and that's one of the things that we can certainly talk about and get into a little bit more. But I think our kind of tagline over these last few weeks is gold is great around your neck, but not so much in your portfolio. And we've been saying that, but a little bit of today, why you and I want to have this conversation is why.
Right.
You know, and give people a little bit of background, because at $5,000 an ounce, gold looks pretty sweet. It's gone up a lot in the last couple of years. But taking us back a few years, just using my lifetime as an example, if we go back just to before I was born, gold topped out around $800 an ounce. I think it was a little bit more than that, but it was just nice round numbers. $800 an ounce to $5,000 an ounce. Really significant increase, but that's also been over 45 years.
Right.
That's a really long time. And what a lot of people don't look at is the fact that just the consumer price index, costs in general, have about quadrupled, gone up about 300%, give or take, you know? So the illustration I've often used is whether you go back to 1980 or 1880, an ounce of gold has pretty much always been able to purchase a really nice men's suit. Not like a Walmart or a Men's Warehouse, but
high quality,
custom tailored men's suit. Something that probably you and I would never wear. Right. A little too casual, but that's a different conversation. Now at an all-time record high, gold might be able to purchase a nice men's suit and a handbag, or a watch on top of it.
Because it's about what right now?
It's about $5,000 an ounce.
Okay, yeah.
So let's call it a five-fold increase, where the consumer price index has about a four-fold increase. So there really isn't a huge premium just between pacing inflation, and that's right. Taking it at a record high, which kind of goes to my next point. Gold is extremely volatile, and when I talk about volatility, that's the uncertainty of temporary price points. And that's what scares a lot of people off from investing in companies. Right. Is if I put $800 into mutual funds, owned companies, in a month or even a year, that could be 1,000, it could be 600. Like, we don't know. And that's the temporary uncertainty or ambiguity. That's what scares people away from owning mutual funds and companies. But it's inherent to gold.
Because for me, as somebody, largely on the outside, not an advisor, right? And even though I've been here for 5 years, you've been here, you started this, but I mean, you've been around for 4 times longer, and you're a financial advisor. So as somebody kind of on the outside, I feel like, and I hear people talk about gold as a safe option. Like, the general sentiment that I pick up on is, there definitely is growth potential, maybe not as much as if you're going to invest in the market, but it's a safe option. And we see commercials. I remember Dad talking about during like the Bill O'Reilly show, and he'd always kind of like be dismayed because he might agree with some of the things that were said on the show, but then the commercials would come on and it was all about gold. And I didn't understand what the heck he was talking about. I was like, can we go watch baseball highlights? But,
Right.
But like, this is something that what you are saying does fly in the face of what I have believed to be true, but I've kind of picked up on just online articles, that kind of thing.
Well, you're right. And gold is often sold or at least portrayed as safety in the midst of uncertainty.
Right.
Is this world's going to hell in a handbasket, but at least you have
Stock
gold,
up
you're
on
going to
gold.
be okay. Yeah. Which even in itself is ridiculous, because even if we had a major worldwide catastrophe, again, gold doesn't produce anything. You can't eat it. You can't cook with it. And it doesn't really offer much utility.
Right.
So even in the midst of like an Armageddon type scenario, you would rather have clean drinking water or a blister pack of antibiotics. And we've said before, precious metals in an Armageddon type situation won't be gold. It'll be little brass tubes capped off with lead and filled with gunpowder. That will be your precious metal.
Right.
And if people want to stock up on that, like, I'm not going to talk them out of that, but probably shouldn't put most of your portfolio into gold or ammo. So gold, going back to what you just said though, about it flies in the face of safety, or it flies in the face of people saying that it's safe. Gold is often sold as a result of fear mongering.
Yeah.
Is even if everything else goes away, at least you'll have a hunk of metal kind of thing. But the problem with that is it just doesn't stand up to history. So during this period I just talked about, the last 45 years or so, gold actually is way more volatile, way more unstable than stocks. We'll just use the S&P 500 as an example. On average, gold has wider swings and deeper troughs than stocks.
Why?
Well, I think one reason is there isn't anything anchoring its value. So it is completely at the whim of consumers.
Okay.
Whereas if you own companies, whether it's a single company or in the case of mutual fund or an index, you can't actually own an index, but let's say an index fund following the S&P or the Russell 2000, it has to be somewhat anchored to the value of those companies, what they're producing. And even if they're getting a lot of bad press and people don't like them, whatever, if the earnings keep increasing, at some point, things have to kind of migrate back to that. So think about, I made this analogy up the other day. I was talking to a client who really loves animals. And I say, well, it's kind of like walking your dog. The day-to-day temporary price is kind of like a new puppy that's never been leash trained. It's all over the place. Now you're walking along a trail. You're following a path. That's kind of like the earnings. Okay. Now they can go up and down a little bit, but that puppy is going crazy back and forth across the path. At any given moment, who knows where that thing is going to be?
But it's tethered.
It's tethered.
Okay.
It's anchored to the fundamentals of that company, or in this case, a group of companies. Gold doesn't have that because it doesn't produce anything. It's only tethered to the vagaries of human desire and greed and fear and all that, which is a very unstable thing to be anchored to.
Right.
So I think that's one of the biggest differences. Now, does fear and greed and emotion get wrapped into day-to-day stock prices as well? Absolutely. But you can't ignore a group of companies whose earnings might double or triple over a 5 or 6 year, or 10-year period. So over this past 45 years, gold has had, by most measures of volatility, significantly more volatility than stocks.
Okay.
Here's the difference though, is if we put $800 into the S&P 500,
right,
the same time period, 45 years ago, it would now be worth 150,000.
So gold, we're looking at about 5,000. S&P 500, just using that same growth,
and just
100,000,
150,000. Now,
150,000.
and that's just, again, we're using the S&P as kind of our proxy for owning a wide variety of companies.
Right.
That's not a recommendation, just as an example. So instead of being able to buy a nice suit and a handbag, you could buy probably a small house.
Right. You're living in Texas or Alabama or Georgia,
yeah.
but you're buying a small house. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, but it's a stark difference. You are rewarded handsomely for dealing with all of that uncertainty. Whereas gold doesn't have the reward. You're dealing with all the temporary uncertainty, the peaks, the valleys, the troughs, the wild roller coaster, as Dave Ramsey calls it, but with no reward at the end. You just got nauseous. So gold, and this is precious metals in general, don't have the long-term payoff for the short-term pain of extreme uncertainty.
So for you, for how you would plan your own investments, would you see gold as having a place in your portfolio, or does it not even belong?
Here's the place. It does not belong in your portfolio. It may belong in your safe. And here's what I mean by that. And 20 years ago, I would not have taken the stand that I have right now. I would have said, no, no reason to have gold.
Okay. We
have several folks that have a fraction of their net worth. So might be somebody who has $1 million in an IRA that's in well-diversified mutual funds. They have 10 grand in gold, a couple ounces sitting in a safe. They could lose that completely, and their financial future is still secured by their real investments. And we'll get into real investments in just a moment. But in that case, that $20,000 or $10,000 in gold might be a very expensive anti-anxiety pill.
Okay.
So here's where gold works. If a small percentage, a fraction of your net worth gives you the confidence to invest properly and strategically the bulk of your investable assets, then it's probably worth it. And we have several folks where it's maybe 1%, maybe even less than 1%. Right. It's a small fraction. It's an expensive way, but it might be an effective way to build confidence.
Okay. But it's almost like a financial keepsake, not an investment.
It is.
The way you're describing it.
And it's very much, it is more sentimental than anything else.
Okay.
And I think maybe there's another place for that too. Again, still in the safe, not in your portfolio. Collectibles. I remember looking at, Mom has some coins from the 1800s, and like that's really cool that she got from our grandmother.
So you don't make all your clients sell all of their collectible coins that their great grandfather gave them.
Go through their garage and look for heirlooms and hand-me-downs. Just we just have garage sales at every client's house. Anyways, but no, I think we have folks who have the collectible aspect. But if having a small percentage in gold gives you the peace of mind to invest the 98, 99% the way it should be, that's probably a decent use for it.
Okay.
But it's purely psychological and sentimental. There's really not a financial value to it.
Yeah. So I want to unpack the other part that you led off with, talking about like what an actual investment is. If there's nothing else on precious metals, but just when we use the word investments, what makes it an investment?
Okay. Well, let me tell you first what doesn't make an investment. You can make a lot of money in this. That doesn't mean it's an investment. You can make a lot of money selling drugs, cocaine and meth, not great investments, at least from all the studying that I've done. Haven't tried them, but some things you don't need to try to know it's not a great investment. Gold, because it's so volatile, you can make money. Anything that has major price swings, you can absolutely make money off it, but you have to get it right twice. You have to buy at the right time and sell at the right time. And that leads into what really does make an investment is you shouldn't have to sell to make money.
So like just running through a short list here. I mean, you buy an antique car or an antique in general. You get a good deal on a 1970 Charger and you're going to fix it up and you could make money from it. You're not saying that it is or isn't a good financial choice maybe, but it's not an investment. It's something that you're trying to flip.
In my definition,
right?
Yes. I think a lot of the spouses of our male clients would probably agree that anything with four wheels or a motor isn't an investment.
Right.
Can you make money? Sure. Do you get a really, really good deal on a boat? and use it for a couple seasons, then sell it. We've had people make money, especially during COVID, where manufacturing was ground to a halt, but that doesn't make it an investment. And simply being able to make money off of something, especially you said like, an old antique or a car where you're putting a lot of sweat equity into that. That's a project. You're being paid for your labor as much as anything else.
Yeah.
Or even, you can make money in Vegas too, but most people don't because you have to get really lucky. You have to get the price right. So what is an investment? Well, an investment should produce something. You shouldn't have to sell your investment in order to make money. Now, do we want our investments to rise over time? Yes, but they shouldn't have to. And here's what I mean by that. If you own a rental property, if you own an income property, the vast majority of your lifetime return will likely come from the rent, not from the capital appreciation.
Right.
Now, if you buy a piece of rental property for $500,000, you hold it for 20 years, you would hope that it would increase in value, but you actually don't want it to increase in value too much until you're ready to sell it, because it's just more money that you're paying taxes on. But you don't need to sell it to make money. You're earning and receiving rent. It actually produces something. Even bonds, while we are not big proponents, as bonds are a major part of somebody's portfolio, it can have a place, but you don't have to sell a bond or a bond fund. You can receive interest. That's a true investment. Does it get overused? Yes, I think bonds as a general category do get overused, but they actually produce something. You don't have to buy at a low price and sell at a high price is the only way to make money. So an investment, you should be able to buy it, hold it, and still receive benefit. Now, in the case of companies, and we pretty much exclusively only own companies through mutual funds, and it gives normal everyday people like us the opportunity to invest in some of the largest, most profitable, most transparent, most cash or I say earnings heavy companies to ever grace this planet, which is amazing. We don't have any billionaires to invest in these things, but we don't have to sell it. We get to share in the earnings those companies produce. So they produce a product, they produce a technology, they produce a service, and we get paid as very minority owners, but as owners nonetheless. We get paid out of the profits and earnings that they produce. And in an ideal situation, a lot of the folks we work with are in this situation where even as they are drawing capital from their investments in retirement, that capital still grows because they have an investment that they're actually selling off principal. They're largely living off of interest and earnings and some capital gains. And that's maybe a whole other conversation, but you're not gradually liquidating the wealth that you produced or that you saved up. You were just living off of what it produces for you.
When we talk about, so investments, obviously we're talking, mutual funds. We kind of understand the place that they have. What about other investments, true investments? So, where my mind obviously goes, because you've already mentioned it, a real estate piece of property that you can rent, whether, and this could be this could be a townhome, Airbnb, second home, whatever. Would you see raw land as an investment, or do you feel like that's less of an investment if it's raw land?
I would say most of the time it's not.
Most of the time it's not an investment.
Not an investment.
Just because of the things that we've already talked about.
Because it doesn't really produce anything.
Right.
However, there are, not so much up here in Alaska, but we have folks we work with in Texas and in Idaho where they lease that land as grazing property.
Okay.
So it does produce an income. But I think that's just a good general rule of thumb, is in order for me to make money off this thing, I don't have to sell it.
Yeah.
Like, this is a really good test.
Yeah.
Another good test is, could I buy this thing and not look at the value for 10 years and have no plans to sell? Now, that doesn't mean you can't. Like, obviously, you can sell a mutual fund.
Right.
But you shouldn't go into it with a thought of, I'm going to invest in these things now, and then I'm going to completely sell off some or all of these.
The flipper mindset, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's
flipping
exactly
homes,
that.
flipping cars.
Yeah. And even if you're retiring and you're in this 401k, You might roll that over into IRA, but a lot of that is going to be a horizontal move. You're going to be rebuying a lot of those same companies in an IRA. So it isn't, you're just moving your ownership from one account into
You're not making
another.
a philosophical change.
No.
Yeah.
No.
What? And I'm not trying to hold you to a percentage here, but I mean, where does a real estate investment fit in with a retirement plan, with an investment plan?
It is very much person to person.
Okay.
Real estate, you certainly can make a lot of money, but I think you have to be much more knowledgeable about the eccentricities and nuances of real estate. You can get burned a lot. A lot of people that we even meet with that come in, especially some of the newer folks that might be meeting for the first time, we look at their real estate portfolio and we get to some of the numbers. Number one, a lot of times they don't know the numbers.
Right.
Number two, their numbers are, well, it at least pays the mortgage. Well, you might have several $100,000 of equity tied up into something and several $100,000 more dollars of liability in the form of a mortgage. Yeah, it better cash flow. Like there's a lot of risk and a lot of capital wrapped up in that. But the bar for a lot of people is so low that the thought is, well, at least somebody's paying the mortgage someday, that the mortgage will be paid off. So it might be working in the right direction, but not nearly as efficiently or effectively as it should. A lot of people, then they don't know their numbers and they don't know real estate. I think one of the nice things about owning companies is you don't have to be the expert.
Yeah.
And you're not fixing things in the middle of the night and things. I think where real estate really comes into play is after you've accumulated a certain amount of wealth to then diversify a little bit. You can afford to hire a property manager. You can afford to pay somebody to fix and do the repairs, and you've got a handyman on call or whatever. It might be your property manager, it might be somebody else. But a lot of people think start the other way where they barely get into a piece of real estate. They have to get a mortgage on it. They can't pay cash, and they use it to actually build wealth rather than diversify the wealth they already have. And they're doing all the repairs, and it can actually be something that owns you more than you owning it. And a lot of times, again, the numbers don't really work.
Well, that's not true because Instagram told me it's passive.
It's passive.
So it's free money
until you've ever purchased it. Exactly.
Compliance will like that statement. We'll have to probably put a disclosure in, but
yeah. It's passive except for all the hours you spend working on it and worrying about it and things like that. And again, like, I mean, Dave Ramsey, he a lot of what he built was on real estate. Even to this day, his real estate knowledge is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I wish I could provide a resource, and maybe we can find him and put him in the show notes, but his checklist, like the boxes that real estate has to cover in order for him to make an investment are very stringent.
Yeah.
He is incredibly selective, and that's why he's done so well. I think a lot of people, especially over the past 20 years with interest rates so low, a lot of willy-nilly money going into real estate because it was so easy to borrow.
Right.
When you're writing a check, especially if it's a 7 or 8 figure check, I think you get a lot more careful about the investment you're trying to make. So I have nothing against real estate, but I think for most people, that's probably not the entry level investment. Now, if you're a contractor, if you grew up in that you're like a real estate expert, that might be different. Ultimately, it goes back to what are long-term goals? How does that fit in? But just as a quick aside, with real estate, it is not a very good diversifier because let's just say, I mean, here in Alaska, $200,000 is about the minimum you could buy for anything, and it's going to be a tiny house with no land, probably a 0 lot line or a condo.
Right.
This in any kind of decent shape. So 200,000, you own a couple bedrooms, a bathroom, a small kitchen.
Right.
That same couple $100,000, I could own 10,000 different companies. So real estate often reduces diversification unless you're at a certain amount of wealth. And again, I just feel like for peace of mind and just not to have my life being dragged by a piece of property, I want to be in a place where there's enough margin I can hire out all those things. Because what I've seen is that chunk of real estate can often take so much time and attention that could have been used to somebody furthering their actual career, or heck, who knows, even spending time with their family and loved ones.
Well, not to get off on a whole tangent here, but we talk a lot about sunk cost And we both know plenty of people where, yeah, you have one or even 10, but you have multiple real estate properties, apartments, townhomes, houses, whatever. The emotion and the psychology that goes into, I've poured into this, I've owned it for so long, all these different things. Not that it makes it a good or bad financial thing, but it's almost impossible, I would imagine, to divorce yourself emotionally in some cases, one way or the other, where it's just, as opposed to, I can look at my retirement plan, I can look at, my statement with my financial advisor and know where things are at. It's not an address, and I'm thinking about all the crap that's gone into it, and got to do this to the roof, and it's just
unless you have a paper cut from your statement, there's no blood, sweat, and tears in your mutual fund investment.
Right.
I do think if people are aware of that, of the ownership bias of real estate, I think there is a potential positive side to it, in the sense that you're far less likely to panic out of real estate. It is much harder to buy and sell, which can be a negative, but for some people could be a positive.
Yeah.
If you're the type of person that's looking at your account statement every single day, or looking on the ticker tape to see what is your net worth at this given moment, you probably just should stop doing that. But if you can't, there might be a place for real estate, in the sense that you don't know what it's worth at any given moment. Even if you did, by the time you list it, get an agent, sell it, close, you've had time for the rational part of your brain to catch up with the emotional part. With even mutual funds, you can panic, and at the end of the day, those things are bought and sold. The other part of it, where, kind of on those same lines, is it can be a forced savings plan. So somebody who hasn't developed the discipline to consistently save, if you got a mortgage that you're paying down, you kind of forced to do that on a monthly basis. Is it the best way to invest for a lot of people? For most people, I would say it's not. Okay. But if you are prone to panic or prone to abandoning your saving investing strategy, real estate, because of all the things you just said, because it's illiquid, because it is more emotionally grabbing, I think it can almost force people to stay on the track a little bit longer. Again,
not as the backbone.
It's certainly not ideal, but knowing people's own weaknesses, again, there's definitely a place for it for some people in certain situations.
Yeah. As we wrap up here, is there anything else that you want to touch on regarding different types of investments and what makes an investment?
No, I just to kind of summarize, I think, investment has to produce something. You should be able to buy that thing and hold on to it and still make money, regardless of what the price is doing. And a true investment is long-term. There's no such thing as a short-term investment. Anything short-term is speculation. So when we're investing in something, whether or not I can liquidate my position in that thing, I need to go into it with a mindset of, I have no plans or desire to sell this thing in the next decade.
Right.
So I think those are just some good check boxes for people to be looking at. Am I making an investment, or am I speculating?
Appreciate you taking some time to talk through these things. And guys, check us out next week for another episode of the Blue Collar Millionaire Show, and we will continue to serve some good nuggets for you, investment wisdom.
And share this with your friends, especially if they're interested in gold, questioning it, wondering, maybe a little bit intrigued. Pass this along.
Thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Millionaire Show. We hope this episode has been inspiring and beneficial to you. If you want help on your journey to financial freedom, reach out to us at veritasalaska.com. We'd love to sit down over a cup of coffee with you, either here in our office or virtually, and get to know you and your needs. And though this podcast is free of charge, we do ask that you please do us two quick favors. If you enjoyed the episode, give our pod a great rating on iTunes or whatever podcast platform you use, and also give us a follow on Instagram. We hope you have a wonderful day filled with gratitude and intentionality. God bless.